Hey, hey, hey. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Um, I've had a pretty good weekend, actually. Um, and I am hoping to have a pretty good podcast for you today. But before we do that, let's get started. That's right. So I guess I'll start out with a little talk about how my weekend went. We did our Vietnam Veterans event this weekend. Um, the weekend began with Friday, the usual. We did karaoke at the bar, and it was great. My amazing DJ and his fucking awesome husband got an RV. So, because they drive an hour to come to work on Friday night, just because they're awesome and, we're family. So they bought an RV so they don't have to worry about, driving all the way back. They can just make it a whole fucking weekend thing. So we can grill out. It's just fantastic. Great news. Um, the event, it was just a great night, real positive. Things have been really down in the dumps lately for everyone. And we all just needed to cut loose. And it was nice. Went really well. Good crowd, too. Then Saturday, we did our Vietnam Veterans event. I was on the radio and I was able to give a shout out, a couple shout outs actually, to this young up and coming band that played for us Saturday night. And they were fantastic. Great bunch of guys. Plan on working with them a lot more actually. Um, in fact, today we recorded a little bit of music. So cool stuff is coming. But one of the really awesome, great things was the gentleman who put on the event, who organized the Vietnam Veterans event, the 21 gun salute, the all the military ceremonies, and the giving these veterans the respect that they were not given in the 60s and the 70s. Wasn't a popular war, as if war should ever be popular. But there was a raffle, two raffles. One's a 50-50. All the money everyone puts in a few bucks here, and let's say it makes $1,000. The winner gets $500, and the other $500 goes to a charity, which is great. Well, this fantastic, wonderful lady who's been married to a veteran for 50 years or so. Love her to death, love him to death. She wanted this patio heater. It's like those 6-foot fucking things. And she wanted it. She put in, for a couple tickets. And I was like, yeah, I usually don't do these, but I threw some money in, bought some tickets, and I won. So I'm like, hey, make sure I was out on a liquor run. Make sure if you see her or him, they can't leave. I need to talk to them. So I come pulling in. They were ready to leave, but they stuck around and they think it's gonna be something serious. I'm like, hey, sweetheart, you won the heater that you wanted. No, I didn't. We were just there at the drawing. We didn't win it. I'm like, yeah, you did. They made a mistake. You won it. I don't think so. Are you sure? I'm like, yes. You want it. You can go pick it up Monday. Ah, uh, oh, did you win it? No, I don't want it. I don't go outdoors. I don't have a patio. You want it. Ah, just a simple, nice thing for someone who is unbelievably giving to so many others. Just really just capped off the sentiment of this weekend. Very, very positive, heartwarming, very sweet, sweet weekend. Hopefully, you have had a wonderful weekend. And if you haven't, I hope your next one is. Actually, if you had a great weekend, I still hope your next weekend is great. But I guess I should get started on the actual podcast and not brag about my weekend. So, I want to talk about angels and the Great Milk Conspiracy. A injustice that is being done against a man who did what any father would do. The death of a musical legend and the murder of one of the greatest soldiers this country has ever seen. Sounds pretty exciting. Even though I'm going to ramble so much, it'll just get boring. But let's get started with the injustice. There's a UFC fighter, Cain Velasquez. Now, I'm not a particular fan of his. He was a good fighter, seemed to be all right, nice enough guy and all. Well, he is now in jail awaiting trial for attempted murder. He chased down Harry Goulart and shot a gun into the dude's car, hitting his father, who's fine. And they want to lock him up for attempted murder. The reason why he chased this man down is he molested Cain Velasquez's 4-year-old son at daycare. Now, as Dana White, the president of UFC, said, we all say we'd do it if it ever happened to us. Cain did it. Now, I'm not saying that he should be, just set free, right? Gary Pluchet, he had a sentence. Now, someone kidnapped and did horrible, horrible things to his son. And when they were flying him, he took the kid off to California. When the marshals were bringing him back, and the news cameras were there, and he's pretending to be on a payphone talking to his brother. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be on the news. I'm gonna be going away for a little bit, but just wanted to let you know." And then, as they're escorting him by handcuffs, he walks over 38 and just pops him right in the head. Drops the gun. He got 90 days. Time served. House arrest. Cain Velasquez should get house arrest. He should be home, caring for his son. he should be playing Monopoly or the Wii. I like Wii bowling and I like Wii golf pretty well. That's what he should be doing. He's a danger to society. No. He's a danger to people that molest his child. I don't see the problem there. So, free Cain Velasquez. The man should get a parade, not a perp walk. But that's just my thoughts on the matter. I mean, I'm right, but still. Everyone has an opinion. Whether you agree with me or whether you're wrong, you have an opinion, and I respect that. All right, so this is an interesting article written by Simran Brar from Boston College. Now, I do paraphrase a bit, so it's not exactly her words. So don't judge her writing by my rambling paraphrasing. The milk conspiracy that I wish I knew when I was 7. All right, so raise your hand if your mother made you drink a glass of milk every damn day of your childhood. Well, my mother's lactose intolerant. I like milk, but don't remember being forced to. But we all remember dipping a cookie in your milk by hand, Oreos, or a lot of people do chocolate chip cookies, right? Throw in the comment section if you ever dipped your chocolate chip cookies in milk. I never did until I was in my 30s. It's like, what? Huh. I'm sure that'd be good. I really like drinking milk with a peanut butter sandwich. Not peanut butter and jelly. That is really good with chili. I don't know why. Peanut butter sandwich. Just bread and peanut butter. Nice, thick globs of it. Your mouth is all like Mr. Ed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Glass of milk. I don't know why. Goes better than soda. So whenever you don't want to drink your milk, people would always say you need strong bones and calcium and protein and tons of other things, which isn't shit that you like when you're 7. It's a lie. The Got Milk ads, the school posters, everything you were told isn't actually true. And did you know even the government was in on it? That's right. That's right. See, this is how it began, right? Now, the milk conspiracy, the great milk lie, cuts deeper than most white lies because they got your mom in on it. That's right. They got the schools in on it. Now, it's a vicious cycle that has betrayed us all. Parents teach it to their kids, and those kids grow up and they teach it to their kids, right? All the way back to World War I. See, the government needed massive amounts of canned and powdered milk to send over to the troops, right? Now, this demand caused farmers to abandon other crops and livestock so they could focus on the milk demand. And when the World War ended, farmers had spent way too much time and energy investing into milk, so they kept producing it. Now, this is when Big Brother steps in, right? Post World War I, you got milk everywhere. Fucking everywhere there's milk. What are you going to do with it? Well, it's easy. Get Americans to drink more milk. See, the government had to buy up a $2 billion surplus in milk and cheese, right? Now, you were sending it all to the military, right? Well, now, shit, what are you going to do? Send it to the schools, right? So now schools are encouraging 4 glasses of milk a day, and the government creates food campaigns featuring milk as an essential part of every kid's diet. That's right, 4 glasses a day. Now, sure, we have learned more and more about how diets work and proper nutrition, but it does seem odd that our government learned that milk was so essential around the time they had $2 billion worth of surplus. But hey, it doesn't just end there. See, the government ended its buyout to the dairy farmers, right? Because, I mean, the government shouldn't just give money to people, especially when it's not necessary. But dairy farmers, what are they going to do? Well, the farmers join together to have milk advertisements. That's right. They pay a fee to have milk ads created and approved by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Okay. Farmers pay Department of Agriculture to run ads because it's more effective when the ads are coming from a government agency, right? Okay. But I mean, that's not, sure, that was after World War One. It was necessary and, it doesn't hurt anyone. Sure. But it goes further. See, it still goes on today. And in recent years, dairy farmers have offered large payouts to Congress to keep dairy in the nutrition guidelines. See, did you know that 60% of Americans do not drink milk when they're adults? It's just not that popular. Now, cheese, yeah, right? Now, milk isn't bad for you, but it's not exactly good for you. See, studies have shown that drinking a shit ton of milk doesn't protect your bones, right? Not exactly as much as we all thought, right? But I mean, calcium, protein, potassium, vitamin D, these are all important. But you get vitamin D from the sun, and there's many other foods that offer these in a much better amounts. Now, also, mankind has been around for quite a while, but we've only had domesticated cows for a few thousand. Really, the human body isn't meant to drink cow milk. I mean, we can, it's fine, but it's not the healthiest thing. And whole milk certainly isn't the healthiest thing. Now, I'm not saying don't drink milk. I'm not saying it's bad to drink milk. I'm not even saying that you shouldn't drink milk. I have milk in my fridge right now. Mostly to cook with, or when I'm eating a peanut butter sandwich, but don't think you have to drink milk. You don't. I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, what are you going to put in your cereal? Water? My mom does, but she's lactose intolerant. Anyways, that is the Great Milk Conspiracy. That's right. I've now debunked it for all. So if anything happens to me, any sudden accidents, just know it was the dairy farmers that did it. But assassinations do happen. And we often are lied to about it. And one assassination that many people still don't believe was General George Patton. He was murdered. And I know that seems odd, right? Why? Why would such a great hero be murdered? Well, many reasons. One, Patton was not a tool. Patton was not a politician. Patton was a warrior and a leader. Eisenhower was a politician. And Patton telling the truth and exposing the powers that be would have been disastrous for the plans of the globalists. Now, I know this is actually not a conspiracy theory. This is a truthful statement and the exposing of a lie. Now, Patton and his Third Army were responsible for successfully driving the Nazis out of France and liberating Paris after D-Day. He was a brilliant but outspoken commander of the Third Army, and he liberated more territory than any other American general, even though he kept getting pulled back and stuck on shit details. So, 75 years ago, he was en route to a Sunday afternoon hunting trip in the devastated region of Mannheim, Germany, when his Cadillac collided with a military truck that had been parked on the side of the road. There were 3 people in the vehicle. 2 were unharmed, and Patton, who was in the back seat, was paralyzed from the neck down. He was taken to an army hospital 20 miles away, where he made unbelievably rapid strides in his recovery over the course of 12 days. His presiding physician had given him the medical clearance to make the grueling transatlantic flight back home. And then suddenly, on December 21st, 1945, the indestructible general, Old Blood and Guts, was pronounced dead. No autopsy was performed. And all reports and investigations into the accident have disappeared. Just records missing. Whoops. Now, in 1979, an American spy with a sterling reputation named Douglas Bazada claimed that he was ordered by the Office of Strategic Services, which was the CIA before it was called the CIA, to kill General Patton and make it look like an accident. Now, since his confession, many independent sources have come forward to corroborate various parts of the story with circumstantial evidence, right? But nothing concrete. Now, the driver of the truck, or of the limousine, Horace L. Woodring, 19-year-old young soldier. He was driving it on an empty road when he noticed a truck in the distance pulled over to the shoulder. After letting a train pass, he accelerated to 20 miles per hour. Not exactly speeding. And the distant truck also pulled away from the curb and slowly advanced in their direction. But just as 2 vehicles were about to pass, the truck driver inexplicably took a hard left turn in front of the Cadillac, leaving him nowhere to turn. Woodring and General Gay were uninjured in the accident. Now, after the accident, Patton, again, as I said, making a great fucking recovery. Now, Douglas Bazada claims that when he survived the crash, he was poisoned in the hospital. Now, I've always been told that Eisenhower was in on it. I don't know. Patton and Eisenhower, good old Ike, were longtime friends. They were contemporaries, but they fell out towards the end of the war because Patton challenged his orders. He spoke out against Eisenhower, claiming he was too easy on the Russians. He said they were not to be trusted. We kicked the hell out of one bastard, only to help establish a second one, more evil and more dedicated than the first. Oh, how right he was. It was one day before General Patton was set to leave Europe once and for all. But 7 months when the accident happened, 7 months prior, the Germans had signed their unconditional surrender to the Allied forces in May of 1945, a victory that was largely won off the back of Patton's unstoppable Third Army that stampeded its way across northern France after the successful D-Day invasion that Patton was punished and not allowed to take part in. See, under Patton's decisive leadership, the Third Army drove the retreating German forces out of occupied territories in an unprecedented display of military brilliance, enabling, among other feats, the liberation of Paris, as said by Robert Wilcox. But toward the end of the war, General Eisenhower and other commanding officers had come to consider General Patton a liability for his unorthodox approach to warfare. He had defied authority, challenged orders, and loudly disagreed with the United States' post-war foreign policy. As a result, he was restationed to Bad Nauheim, which is a little German town outside Frankfurt. And he was given a desk job commanding the 15th Army, a unit of historians that were given military status and assigned to write the history of the war. This was the ultimate insult to Patton, who was begging to continue the fight in Japan. Patton decided to spend his last day in Europe hunting pheasant with his close aide, General Hap Gay Hobart. Driving them in a Cadillac limousine was the 19-year-old private first class Horace Woodring, and they were accompanied by Sergeant Joe Scrouse, who was leading them in an open-air Jeep that carried rifles, supplies, and a hunting dog. The drive began without incident. The weather was cold, but visibility was clear, and the road was uninhabited by hardly any traffic. Sitting in the back seat, he was surveying the war-torn landscape littered by derelict vehicles and remarked how awful war is. Think of the waste. Woodring stopped at a railroad track to allow for the passing train and noticed off in the distance a standard-issue GMC United States Army truck that was pulled over on the shoulder. Just as he started back up, the 2.5-ton Deuce and a Half with a canvas-covered flatbed pulled away from the curb and began advancing in the other direction. The two vehicles were about to pass. I had no opportunity to avoid him whatsoever, said Horace Woodring in a 1986 interview. But the Horace was only going 20 miles per hour. Now, General Patton was very different from other generals. He chose to join combat with his soldiers rather than direct orders from a desk. He always made it a point to be seen during the battle riding in an open Jeep. After the war, a GI told Patton's wife about an incident where their tanks and vehicles got stuck in the snow. He yelled to us to get out and push. And first I knew there was General Patton pushing right alongside of me. Sure, I knew him. He never asked a man to do anything that he wouldn't do himself, which is a true mark of leadership. Now, General Patton had ricocheted into General Gay's lap, where he laid momentarily unconscious and bleeding from a massive head wound that extended from the bridge of his nose up towards the middle of his scalp. Upon coming to, he told General Gay, "I'm having trouble breathing, Hap. Work my fingers for me." And as he was moving Patton's fingers, it became clear he had no feeling in them. "Go ahead, Hap. Work my fingers." Patton was paralyzed. Despite the close proximity of a hospital in Mannheim, he was taken to a facility over 20 miles away. He was given a terrible prognosis. He was in critical condition for the first few days, but he started making a remarkable recovery. That's very Patton of him. The residing physician, Dr. Sterling, wrote on his medical chart, "The muscles of respiration began to function freely. This gave us high hopes that the spinal cord was not as seriously damaged as we had every reason to believe in the beginning. His general condition is remarkably good." The indestructible man improved more and more. On December 18th, he told his wife, "I'm feeling really well, Anne, for the first time." Then, as they were making arrangements to send him home, his wife left to go get lunch. 30 minutes later, Patton is dead. The truck driver responsible for the fatal crash was a soldier from Camden, New Jersey named Robert Thompson. He had stolen the vehicle, allegedly, to take it out for a joyride with two other passengers that were never named. No one has ever been able to explain why or what Thompson was doing 50 miles from his base. He had no orders to be there, and he was in violation of the rules. Or that's the story. Now, Patton famously got in trouble for striking two soldiers in a fit of temper while visiting a hospital in Sicily. These were two separate instances. Eisenhower covered up the first incident, but the second one was released to the press, became a public relations nightmare. Patton was forced to publicly apologize, but this cost him a role in the D-Day invasion. After the war was over, 1 million people lined the 25-mile parade route leading to greet General Patton in June 1945 after the war was over. Patton went back to Europe to command the 15th Army, a unit tasked with writing the history of the war. On his last trip home, he eerily predicted his own death. "My luck is all run out, dear. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to die over there." Now, Thompson, the soldier who was responsible, allegedly, for the accident, was accused by his own daughter, June, of stripping pieces of Patton's car and sold them on the black market, where he made a mint procuring contraband for fellow soldiers. In an interview with military historian Robert Wilcox for his book titled Target Patton, she said he was a shyster. He told her that he sold pieces of Patton's car after the accident. Y. Thompson, a highly skilled driver who had safely piloted vehicles through dangerous war zones for 2 years, was capable of making such a hapless mistake. Now, a book written by Bill O'Reilly. Why was he turning there? There was nothing there. No road, nowhere to go. He took a left turn for no reason at all. Wilcox contacted Horace Woodring's son, John, who finds the collision suspicious. As soon as the truck driver got to him, he veered right into the car. 3 drunk truck occupants who pretty much disappeared with all the general's flags and whatnot. They accidentally turned into that? I don't think so. Not even if they were drunk. When asked why his father may have thought the collision was an assassination attempt, well, he always had his thoughts that it could have been an assassination. Now, this is where the plot deepens. General Wild Bill Donovan was chief of the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which was the CIA, before it was called the CIA. He was very sympathetic to Stalin, and he found Patton's antagonizing of the Soviets distasteful. Donovan is said to have ignored intelligence that alerted him of a plot to kill Patton. Although Douglas Bazada, a Jedburgh assassin, claims that he was paid $10,000 by Donovan to kill Patton. Now, military police and a number of unidentified investigators descended on the scene with unprecedented speed. This alone is curious, seeing as the accident took place on a deserted road in a remote area. Collision occurred around 11:45 a.m. He was in an ambulance by 12:20. How were they able to respond so quickly? Had they known of a plot to assassinate him? Were they standing by waiting for it to happen to make it look good? Inexplicably, Robert Thompson, the truck driver, was quickly whisked away by the Army's Criminal Investigations Division. Wilcox learned of this revelation from Thompson's lawyer, who said the CID got him out of Germany that night. They flew him to England, and he was incommunicado for a few days, which is a little unusual. Why would an American soldier be taken to an undisclosed location in England when there were American forts nearby? I mean, they were housing Nazi war criminals. Why was he taken to England? Who else was in England at that time? Now, like most details, in this case, his 4-day trip to the UK, the files do not mention General Patton at all. So, reports of the scene, what do those say? Oh, that's right. They are missing. An official accident report, all other records pertaining to the death of one of America's most decorated war heroes, is missing, is more than suspicious. It's unfathomable, especially when considering the exacting measures to which the military approaches documentation. I mean, you got fucking hand receipts for damn near everything. But Patton's investigation into Patton's murder is missing. Lieutenant Joseph Shanahan, an MP present on the scene, told his local newspaper in 1979 that no report was ever made because the incident was considered a trivial, routine traffic accident. Bullshit. Not only is this untrue because there are multiple references made to the official report, meaning there was one, this also would have been a blaring break in protocol, especially when it comes to the life-threatening injury of an illustrious general in the Army. they document fucking traffic accidents because there's an officer who is signed for that truck, who is responsible for that truck. When that truck leaves the fucking motor pool, it's documented. Every vehicle. They know who took it, when they took it, and where they were going. If it's stolen, then the fucking person who's guarding the motor pool is responsible. And they have to fucking document it. This shit doesn't just go missing. If CID was there, a crime was suspected. They were the military's professional investigators. If it's a routine traffic incident, CID wouldn't be there. If it was a routine traffic incident, there would be documentation and no CID. The fact that CID was there means there was a crime. Now, in 1979, World War II's elite Black Ops team, known as the Jedburghs, made the astonishing allegation that Douglas Pizzata was hired to kill Patton, given to him by General Wild Bill Donovan. While serving as a Jedburgh, Pizzata was an expert marksman and hired assassin who completed many covert operations that involved him parachuting into enemy lines to help organize the resistance in France. On the CIA's webpage dedicated to the Jedburghs, it lists their motto as surprise, kill, and vanish, which eerily rings true in Pizzata's alleged mission to stop Patton. Now, Patton was buried in an American cemetery in Luxembourg, where it is said he wanted to be buried alongside his men. This has been contested. His family requested him be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. And according to his wife, they wouldn't allow for it. They couldn't get him in the ground fast enough. Now, Pizzata said that the car accident was really just a ruse for him to shoot the general with a silent projectile at a low velocity, which would cause the equivalent of a whiplash suffered at the speed of 80 or 100 miles an hour, which is why the 20-mile-an-hour car crash paralyzed him. I mean, he suffered whiplash as though the car was going 80 to 100 miles an hour. He hid behind derelict equipment cast away on the side of the road, waiting for Patton's car to drive by. Now, instead of bullets, the device launched what could be compared to as like a rock, right? Which is why Patton's wounds were so severe in comparison to the other passengers. Experts were always confounded how the general broke his neck in whiplash going 20 miles an hour. While Pizzata's story has a lot of holes, he does have a sterling reputation. Pizzata has 4 Purple Hearts, a Distinguished Service Cross, 3 Croix de Guerre from the French. Toward the end of his career, he worked as an aide to Navy Secretary during the Reagan administration and was a member of the 9/11 Commission and worked on Senator McCain's 2008 presidential campaign. So, he's well connected. Patton was a strategic genius and student of warfare and was a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute and West Point, where he learned to be disciplined and decisive on the battlefield. He was a proud warmonger who didn't mince his words. The only thing for an army to do when it has the enemy on the run is to keep going until it runs out of gas, and then continue on foot to keep killing them until it runs out of ammunition, and then kill them with bayonets and rifle butts. Patton was the Nazis' worst enemy. Now, the operation was botched when General Patton did not die in the accident because Patton's hard to kill. So they used a poison that caused the death of General Patton in the hospital. They waited until his wife went to lunch, and then they murdered him in his bed. Now, in according to Robert Wilcox in Target Patton, the lost files seem to have been missing as early as 1953 when a reporter from the Indiana Post-Tribune wrote the Army requesting details about the general's death. The Army did not equivocate when they responded. First, that the report of investigation is not on file, and details of the accident are not shown. Second, the casualty branch has no papers on file regarding the accident. And third, there is no info, re. the accident in General Gay's 201 file. What little truth there is about what happened on December 9th, 1945 can be gleaned from a few pieces of evidence that haven't been destroyed. There's old memos, letters from military personnel, and the unofficial first-hand accounts from that day. Hidden in these files are references to the official report that has since disappeared, meaning there was a report. Wilcox found a document dated one day after the accident on December 10th, 1945. The letter written from Army Public Relations officer read, "This office obtained the official report of the accident from the 818 Military Police Battalion at Mannheim and furnished details of the accident to correspondents." What has been made brazenly obvious is that there has been a concerted effort made to rid themselves of all records relating to the death of General Patton. If it were just a matter of one or even two such records, one might easily think that their disappearance is not necessarily out of the ordinary. Records do get lost, misplaced, accidentally destroyed. But the number of known primary records about Patton's accident that are now missing is at least 4. Most likely, many, many more. Only references to these reports have survived. This intentional purge. Among the multiple reports missing is one conducted by General Geoffrey Keyes, commander of the 7th Army, who suspected something was off and launched his own probe into the accident. But like many other documents, Keyes' reports have gone missing. Strangely enough, the only memo in circulation is an official statement that was signed 7 years after the accident by Cadillac driver Horace Woodring. Woodring said in 1979 he had no recollection of ever having made a statement in 1952. Having signed one in that year, he writes, "As far as Woodring is concerned, it was obviously a forgery." But many details are hazy from that day. Information about what happened to the hunting dog and Joe Scruce, the soldier who was leading the Cadillac, are unmentioned. Like Thompson, Scruce was never seen or heard from publicly again. It was only while researching Target Patton did Wilcox discover that Scruce had died in a bizarre and untimely death on his birthday in 1952. Apparently, he wouldn't play along. Joe Scruce was troubled in the weeks leading up to his death. When his wife asked about his birthday plans, he responded, "No, Glenise, no party. I won't live to see it." He was making love to his wife when suddenly his whole body went numb and he became paralyzed. He began to hemorrhage blood from all cavities and died shortly while waiting for an ambulance that took an unusually long time. Scruce's medical records show that he was a picture of good health, but Army doctors claim he suffered a brain aneurysm. Sudden paralysis is a common symptom, but hemorrhaging? That is not. And just like General Patton, no autopsy was ever performed, although his wife did request one. Now, you got to think, why would they want Patton dead? Well, first you got to look at his personality, what got him in so much trouble, right? Patton's wife said one minute he was joking with the nurses and drinking cognac in bed, and then he's suddenly dead, right? Patton was famously bombastic, impulsive, and popular, delivering rousing expletive-ridden speeches that flew in the face of buttoned-up military protocol. Patton thumbed his nose at authority and often challenged strategic decisions and made higher-ups in the chain of command or constantly in conflict with him. He also took risks where no general could or would. These led to sweeping victories in liberating Western Europe after D-Day. He was irreplaceable. That's why Eisenhower was forced to continuously defend Patton. He wanted Patton gone, but he needed Patton. Patton, when he slapped those two soldiers and called them cowards, he was removed from D-Day. Maybe he was killed because they wanted him silenced from telling about the top secret decision to leave thousands of Allied POWs abandoned in Russia. Now, in Italy, Patton was forced to take a supporting role to his British rival, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, in the Allied Sicilian campaign. He felt it was not only unfair, but tactically unsound for Montgomery to get all the glory. But Eisenhower kept kissing Montgomery's ass. Once the battle had begun, Patton strong-armed General Harold Alexander, theater invasion commander, into giving him permission to take on a larger role, citing without Americans, whom the British so heavily relied on for support and aid, there would be no invasion in the first place. So his troops broke away from Montgomery's flank and took Palermo before moving on to the coastal city of Messina, which was supposed to be Montgomery's prize. Making matters worse, he was not a gracious winner. While the press relished the rivalry, Patton had too. But it was a headache for Eisenhower, whose job it was to keep a unified Allied front. And Patton violated other orders. People thought of him as a loose cannon. His trailblazing Third Army had to be physically stopped by reducing their supply of gasoline as they were on the home stretch to Berlin. They were guzzling gas at the rate of 350,000 to 400,000 gallons per day. They did not want Patton to get to Berlin first. And as I said before, he talked about kicking the hell out of one bastard only to establish a second one. But history would tell Patton was right. When the post-war negotiations turned into a 40-year-long Cold War, Patton hated kowtowing to the Kremlin, and he protested against the secret decision that Washington made not to press the Russians for the safe return of thousands of captured Allied POWs. They were still under Soviet control in 1945. According to a 1992 part series in The New American, Soviet participation in the United Nations and entrance into the Japanese War were seen as more important than thousands of Allied POWs. As a result, these POWs were either shot or spent the rest of their lives working in the gulags. The plot to stop Patton could have easily evolved into an assassination order. Eisenhower's political ambitions. The writing was on the wall. The victory in Europe was clearly in sight. Patton was not needed. and his flamboyant style and unpredictability was a liability that Eisenhower could afford no longer. There have long been rumors that he was going to forego military privileges and pensions in the military retirement, instead resign, so he could be free to speak his mind. He had mentioned this several times to General Gay, the same man who was riding in the Cadillac with him when it crashed. This begs the question, was Patton silenced permanently from telling his story? Most eerily, it was General Patton who said something oddly prescient in the months before the accident. When he was home for a brief visit in June 1945, he told Beatrice, "My luck is all run out. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to die over there." It is a sad and shameful secret that we murdered one of our greatest heroes because of political ambitions of a lesser general and a lesser man. So, we lost Taylor Hawkins, the drummer for the Foo Fighters. He was the drummer for Alanis Morissette. Details of his death haven't exactly come out, but it is suspected that there were chemicals involved. But before, or rather than telling a bunch of sad stories, I'd like to read some funny stories that Taylor Hawkins told back in 2019. As he releases his new album, Get the Money, we get inside of the frustrated frontman to talk star-studded cameos, trusting your instincts, and what it's like having Dave Grohl as your boss. If it all goes wrong in music, Taylor Hawkins could carve out a decent career as an impressionist. Right now, the Foo Fighters drummer is explaining how Eagles guitarist Joe Walsh gave him the title of his new all-star solo album, Get the Money, a phrase which in turn was handed down from blues legend B.B. King. As he talks, he switches between his own hyperactive Southern California accent, Walsh's slurred Midwestern croak, and B.B. King's deep rumble. I was whining about how hard it is touring the world, staying in these $500 hotel suites. Joe said that he'd had the same conversation with B.B. King. "Oh man, I'm sick of being on the road." And BB went, "Oh man, are you getting paid?" "Yeah, a lot." "Well, shut up and get the money." And Joe just said to me, "Stop being a pussy and get the money." Simple as that. Now that's some pretty good name dropping. But this is an album full of Perry Farrell, Dave Grohl, Roger Taylor from Queen, Chrissie Hynde, and Leanne Rimes, yes. And John Davison, the singer of Yes. And Mark King, Level 42 bassist. Now, despite his protestations, you don't notch up 20 years in one of the biggest contemporary rock bands on the planet without being a spoiled rock star. Hawkins is actually funny and self-deprecating, and is very much aware of his place in the Foo Fighters. It's Dave's band. He's in charge. Grohl appears on several songs on Get the Money, including the Foo-esque opener, Cross the Line. Must have been nice for Hawkins to boss around the guy who pays his wages for once. Nah, it doesn't go like that. I don't know how to boss Dave Grohl around. He only knows how to boss me around. He comes in and says, "What have you got?" And he does what he does. I take it and say, "Thank you." He recorded his album Get the Money piecemeal over the last couple years between Foo tours, right? There's so much more in my head than being a drummer in the Foo Fighters, musically, he says. Still, being a member of the Foos definitely proves useful when it comes to persuading people to appear on your album. LeAnn Rimes appears on the song See You in Hell. See, LeAnn Rimes and Hawkins live in the same neighborhood, and their kids go to the same school. He asked her if she wanted to sing on this psychedelic stoner rock song, and she said yes. And while singing it, she laid down on the studio floor. His idol turned friend, Roger Taylor, the Queen drummer, adds his throaty rasp to a version of Shape of Things, a psychedelic anthem recorded by the Yardbirds in 1966. Taylor isn't the only hero he's rocked in. Perry Farrell has his kettle whistle vocals added to I Really Blew It, which takes a rueful look at travails of married life. Eat these balls if you're going to take them, is one of the lines in the song. He started out in school bands in Laguna Beach. He actually has a connection to John Davison, the singer with Prague Giants. Yes. The pair have known each other since they were kids and played in several groups together, the best of which was Covers outfit Heavy Industry. How stupid a name is that? We played high school dances, a wedding. That was the most successful band we were ever in, together. The pair's paths diverged after the halcyon days of Heavy Industries. Hawkins passed through a couple of shitty bands, tried to sound like Jane's Addiction, before he landed with a gig with Canadian singer Sass Jordan. And with Jordan, he visited London to play the intimate Camden Underworld. And it was via Jordan that he was introduced by former child star turned singer Alanis Morissette. Alanis had just made this record and she needed a band. So she hired me as a drummer and kind of put me in charge of getting the band together. So she went off to do a bunch of press and she came back and it just kind of never stopped. That little album was Jagged Little Pill. 30 million copies sold worldwide. Now, they went from obscurity to insane levels of fame. I was lucky in that I was really on the outside of the eye of the hurricane. Lannis was living in this absolute fucking... It's too much when you're the flavor of the year. So much pressure. The positiveness of it comes with the negativeness of someone like Courtney Love saying she's bullshit or whatever. Listen, I was enjoying the spoils of it, but all the pressure was on her. Man. Taylor Hawkins passing away is sad. He was an interesting guy. You should check out, any of his interviews. And Foo Fighters just did a movie, Studio 666. And looks like it's going to be pretty hilarious, but in it, Dave Grohl basically kills all the members of the Foo Fighters, right? And then becomes a solo act. But it's definitely going to be a little more sad than funny now. All right. Last thing is just a short little piece on angels. That's right. Angels. This makes me think of the movie Prophecy. Christopher Walken, great movie. Had a pretty decent sequel, and then a shitty third one. Then they did like 8 direct-to-video ones, but the first Prophecy is one of my absolute favorite movies. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And if you watch it and don't like it, keep watching it until you do like it. In it, Viggo Mortensen plays Satan in a very interesting way. But angels, they're not the cute little cherubs with rolls of baby fat whose only concern in life is making you happy and posing for greeting cards. So get that fucking idea out of your head. No, angels are angry, ass-kicking, flaming, sword-wielding vengeance mongers who impregnate human women with mutant spawn in their spare time. If angels were people, they'd be dragged to Nuremberg and held accountable for their voluminous crimes against humanity. If you ever see an angel coming towards you, run the other way. Because seeing an angel is not fucking good news, man. While most religions have a pantheon of non-corporeal flunkies who serve the whims and gods and the traditions of mostly Judeo-Christianity, but really all children of Abraham, including Islam, have this. The first reference to angels in the Old Testament is the very first one, coming about halfway through Genesis. In an indictment of the literary quality of the Bible, this debut comes with no explanation or exposition of what an angel is. In fact, one could say that the angel's arrival on the scene is strictly Deus Ex Machina. Now, I think it's funny. All right. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Okay, so not exactly sweet little babies. Nope, flaming fucking sword. And Genesis is filled with angels who are generally carrying out the vengeful and arbitrary will of the Old Testament God, the spiteful one. At one point, an angel appears to convince Hagar to return to a life of slavery, abuse, and prostitution. This, incidentally, is the first appearance of the official Hebrew word for angel. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. Now Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw she had conceived, the mistress was despised in her eyes. Now Sarai say unto Abram, May wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into the bosom. And when she saw she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. He said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call him Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren. Okay, so the angel zooms down on a woman who's been abused and promises to multiply her seed and orders her returned back to her slave owners for more rape, prostitution, forced childbirth, and beatings at the hand of her owner's jealous wife, so she can bear a wild man who will be the enemy of all humanity. Okay. So, that passage, not really included in the whole guardian angel, merchandising scam, right? Here's another quote from Genesis that they don't really talk about that much in the guardian angel business. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. They chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. And the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Now, sons of God is used to describe angels many times in Hebrew. So, angels aren't supposed to have physical bodies. Exactly. But then they can sire children. And, yeah. So, I mean, we could go on and on, but that's all Old Testament, which is really full of bad news. So, the New Testament, angels are joyous, right? Well, somewhat. The news of Jesus, that's clearly good news. Many angels are known by name. In the beginning, there was one angel who was better than the rest. His name was Lucifer, which means morning star, but you might know him better as Satan. Interestingly, this most smart, powerful, and beautiful of all angels is the one who chooses to rebel. Lucifer launched his coup in an attempt against the Almighty. He subverted a third of all angels to fight on his side. Outnumbered 2-1, his war in heaven ended with a defeat, and he and his minions were cast into hell. But there is a hierarchy of angels. Archangels, the elite core of God's murdering army. They are the ones who obliterated the city Sodom and Gomorrah. And they have the names Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Metatron. Then there are the seraphim. The Catholic Encyclopedia says seraphim stand before God as ministering servants in the heavenly court. So that's pretty cool. Cherubim, which is where the word cherub comes from. These are bloodthirsty mutant freaks. They're not adorable, right? They're little because they fucking disembowel people with flaming fucking swords. Now, thrones are keepers of God's justice, which is a good thing. But that kind of makes them executioners. Dominions. These are cosmic bureaucrats, responsible for your karmic check getting lost in the mail. Virtues. These are angels that are in charge of nature and lending hand to beleaguered humans. Powers. These are angels in charge of killing demons, like think of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Principalities. These are angels specifically made to watch over nations, not exactly, the United States or Mexico, but nations of people like the Cherokee Nation. And then the guardian angels, which are just plain old angels who are supposed to watch out for individual people. The concept of guardian angel is really one of the most baffling ideas, though, right? Because we have all these fiery vengeance, fucking murdering motherfuckers. And now we've got these bureaucratic angels that are just like, okay, got a list of people I need to check on. All right, cool, got it. Now, no one knows where the guardian angel concept comes from. It's not mentioned in the Bible. It's not mentioned in the Quran. It's not mentioned in the Torah. It's mostly mentioned by companies that are selling these things. But this angelic image, not the four-headed monster, but this angelic little baby or a beautiful, long-haired, blonde, pretty boy. Yeah, those probably sell a lot better than their actual descriptions. But regardless of what you believe, as far as angels or deities or karma, I do hope that it brings you joy and brings you peace. If something motivates you to try to be a better person and treat others better, then could it really be that bad of a thing? So again, I've had a wonderful, positive weekend. I do hope that you have a great time ahead of you. And for all the bad times, it will pass. Don't know when, don't know how, but it'll pass. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and try to be willing to give help when you can. But I hope you enjoyed my rambling, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.